This past weekend was like any weekend in Trump world. On the heels of a week full of revelations of incompetence and scandal, cabinet members either being shown the door or possibly being canned, terrible economic data, and little to any reason to believe there's a method to the madness. Then there are, of course, the threats. As we've seen in two instances that led to actual impeachments on both the international stage and later with the insurrection on American soil, they're often more than just simpleton ramblings. But it's this distasteful formula that we have to navigate if we're going to try and segregate the real from the ridiculous in the face of a fire hose of noise coming from this administration. Now, I'm going to be the first one to admit that for years, I would readily take the bait every time Trump would assault a norm, whether demeaning veterans and military service, sully women's reputations, or seemingly endless, indiscriminate lies about anything and everything. So, with that, here's my suggestion in just a week's sample on how we should resist the bait and focus on the real threats. Now, I begin this exercise by pointing out that I think Trump knows that he's in trouble, real trouble this time. The president, try though that he might, knows that as much as he attempts to now blame Biden for the sudden downturn in the economy and the markets, it's his tariffs and his unstable and inconsistent messaging that has even his supporters unsure if there's a light at the end of this tunnel. He also knows that he's in over his head. That's why he's lashed out at everyone, including conservative stalwarts like the Wall Street Journal and Fox News this weekend. And even his normally blind and timid loyalists are starting to ask hard questions. Damning polls after polls show historically bad numbers this early on in his term. Universal condemnation from economists, and even rumblings on Capitol Hill from the typically compliant Republicans that, you know what, Trump's in some trouble here and we're not so sure he knows how to get out of it. Well, this all kicked in Donald's base instinct. Let's change the subject. So he flooded the zone. Over the course of a couple days, he insulted the Catholic Church and the laity, photoshopping a picture of himself as the Pope, just days after the passing of Francis and as the Cardinals begin the conclave to choose a successor. It was, of course, bad taste to put it politely, but it was also right on brand. He then told America he wanted to reopen the Rock. That's right, Trump wants to reopen Alcatraz, even though the prison's been used for decades as a tourist site after it was decommissioned for being far too expensive to operate and would need to basically be rebuilt from scratch. It's ridiculous, but in his mind it makes him sound tough on crime and again was intended to distract. Then we come back to Greenland, where our president said,
"Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?"
No.
What is the strategy?
Yeah. I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security.
Now, to be clear, while I think down deep he would love to invade a European ally and throw the tenets of NATO to the wind, even he knows how uniting every remaining friend we have in this world against America, especially after his global trade war, is crazy even by his standards. His hope, I believe, is that he'd rather be talking about this than the two real issues he's knee-deep in. Trump is on a collision course with the Supreme Court over the core of the Constitution, the rule of law and due process. When pressed on if he would follow the oath that he swore to uphold, he shockingly said this.
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Now remember, Trump is the same guy who said he knew more about the military than all the generals. And now suddenly he's deferring to other unnamed officials to give him direction as to what to do next when it comes to the limits of the law. Now, this is what we should focus on. The other soundbite that mattered? It was Trump's rationalization about the tough times that were on our horizon.
10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl doesn't need $37. She can be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Let's not waste a lot of time on a stupid question.
For a man who told us at the onset of COVID, even though every scientist told him otherwise, that everything was going to just magically disappear in a matter of months, for him to acknowledge that economic pain was coming for Americans was damning. He'll lie about anything, but he knows if he lies about this, what's coming, it's only going to be worse. Nothing in his conversation with Meet the Press gave manufacturers, retailers, consumers, and investors any reason to believe that Trump had a plan to dig himself and us out of the hole that he's dug for our nation. So yes, I get it. It's easy to take the catnip of an orange man dressed up as a pope or reopening Alcatraz or even invading Greenland. But it's really the economy and our very democracy that we ought to keep our eyes on.